Hey everybody. Before we get into the episode, we just want to let you know that Tim and I pre-record our episodes, which means when we sat down and discussed this episode, we were living in the blissful time before all the events of this week happened. And when it sounds like we're completely ignoring what's going on, the truth of the matter is we didn't know what was going on because this week hadn't happened yet. And we just want to let you know it's not that we're ignoring anything, and it's not that we don't want to acknowledge what's happening and all the very real feelings that are going on right now. It's just that they hadn't happened. And since we're talking about the events of this week, we have a lot of feelings. We're sure you have a lot of feelings. So if you want to get involved, volunteer, donate, whatever capacity you're able, you can check out your local chapter of Black Lives Matter. For us, it's Black Lives Matter Los Angeles, or various other organizations. We're going to put some links in the show notes page if you want to check them out. So you can donate if you have the means, or volunteer your time, or whatever your heart leads you to do. And we hope that you are staying as safe as possible. And we just want to send you all a lot of love right now. All right. Thanks a lot, and cue the episode. Wheel of Time community, and welcome to the Wheel of Time Pod-Thru. I'm Teresa.
And I'm Tim.
And together, we're going to walk through Robert Jordan's Wheel of Time book series. How you doing, Tim?
Doing good. It's been an interesting weekend, Memorial Day weekend here in the United States and all that. So, yeah, it's been good.
Great. Before we get started, we just want to remind you that this is a reread. We assume that you've read the entire series, so there will be spoilers. You have been warned. All right, Tim. What are we going to be doing in today's episode?
Today we're going to be discussing Chapter 2 of The Shadow Rising, where the boys fight for their lives when attacked individually in unusual and confusing ways. Chapter 2 is called Whirlpools in the Pattern, and the icon is the dragon.
Here's a summary to act as a reminder for those of you who are not reading along with us. The chapter is split into thirds, so let's tackle it in 3 different parts.
Okay.
The wind blew over the rooftops of Tyr toward the stone where our intrepid heroes have taken temporary residence. Perrin sits watching Fail pace the room nervously. She comments that he should have stood up for himself and gotten a more lavish room, but he shrugs it off because he prefers simple things and because he knows this is not what is really bothering her. Fail tells him that the Lord Dragon seems to have lost interest in him. She's thinking of leaving Tyr. He agrees that it's probably a good idea, and she's upset that he didn't ask her to stay. While Perrin does want her to stay, he knows that it's not safe. She wants him to come away with her, but Perrin can't. They argue about duty, and Perrin tries to explain that he feels like he's part of Rand's destiny. Perrin broods a bit about axes and hammers, and how all he wants is to be a blacksmith, before noticing that Fail is upset with him. She won't tell him why, because of course not, and Perrin stubbornly refuses to ask. We certainly can't make things easy. Outside, in the darkness, a cock crowed. Perrin's axe comes to life and attacks. He is able to deflect the axe with his hammer, but it swings around and comes at him again. As the axe sped by her, Fail grabs the haft with both hands. It spins and attacks her, but Perrin grabs the axe handle to stop it from slashing her. The axe thrashed in his hands, trying to get at him as he wrestled with it. Whenever he would get some distance between the axe and himself, it would change its attack and go after Fail. He would yank it away from her, and the axe would redouble its effort to kill him. Perrin commands Fail to get out before the axe kills them both. She refuses to leave him, and ignoring her shouts and pounding fists, still keeping one hand on the axe, he wrestles her out and slams the door in her face and locks it. Alone with the axe, he fights until he outmaneuvers it, and the axe embeds itself into the wooden door. Perrin unlocks the door, and once they both check that the other is unhurt, Fail slaps Perrin and they start fighting again. Perrin loses his cool and is a little more forceful with his argument, which works well for a Seldian woman, and the fight fizzles out. They both figure Rand had to be responsible for the bizarre axe attack, and Perrin wants to give him a piece of his mind. Fail slips her arm through his, and leaving the axe in the door, they start off through the stone. That's the end of the Perrin section, so let's cut it here for now.
Last episode, we talked about how this book has no prologue, and you made a comment about how the first chapter really basically functions like the prologue.
Yeah.
I realized that chapter 2 starts with the wind blowing like other first chapters do. It's like someone cut and pasted the classic intro of The Wheel of Time turns, myths fade to legends, beginnings and endings from the start of the text and placed it where it didn't belong, leaving the wind part here. It just struck me as weird to have this whole "and the wind moved" passage here while missing the "there are no beginnings and endings in the Wheel of Time."
Yeah, no, I totally see what you're saying. Like, there was probably some weird cut and pasting editing stuff going on. And yeah, I still just don't understand why they didn't call the first chapter as a prologue, because it would make more sense because it operates as a prologue. But
yeah, and they never did it again. Like this.
No, yeah, this is the only book that does it. It's weird.
Yeah. So, yeah. In The Great Hunt, we see Rand go through the process of being made into a lord, or at least to appear as one. Mm-hmm. In this book, it's Perrin's turn to go through a similar process.
Yeah.
The difference is that Rand had Maureen manipulating him along the way. But Perrin will kind of fall into being a lord by accident and sheer strength of character. Fail does a bit of manipulation along the way, but mostly Perrin is given the status of lord either because he convinces people that he is one by his actions, or they assume he must be a lord if he's such a close personal friend of Rand. Mm-hmm. And I'm looking forward to seeing Perrin walk that path in this book.
Definitely.
Perrin is one of my favorite characters, but man, can the guy brood.
Oh my gosh, right? Emo Perrin.
Yeah, we go from trying to figure out why Fail is on edge, to reflecting on him being bound to Rand's fate, to the axes versus the hammer dilemma, all in the span of just a couple of pages. Like, if Perrin lived today, this would totally be going in his blog.
Right?
Yeah.
Can I just say how much I hate the trope where the woman's upset and tells the man, well, if you don't know, I'm certainly not going to tell you.
Oh, yeah.
It's so petty and stupid, and I hate it so much. Like, I'm also not a fan of Perrin's response. Mm-hmm. Quote, he knew she wanted him to ask. He knew that much. She might not tell him, but he was supposed to ask. Stubbornly, he kept his mouth shut. This time, he meant to wait her out. I swear, those two drive me crazy. Why?
Yeah,
Why does it have to be like this?
Yeah, it's frustrating. Like, one thing I'm not looking forward to in the first half of this book is the messed up dynamic that is Perrin and Fail's relationship.
Yeah.
This chapter sets up the tone of their serious communication issues. Perrin wants her to be happy and protected, but is not willing to say that he actually wants her to stay with him because it might put her in danger. Mm-hmm. And she's not willing to tell him that she wants to stay with him because she wants him to initiate it and ask her.
Right.
Because the best way to foster and grow a relationship with someone is to not tell them what you want or expect them to say the thing you refuse to say first.
Are you saying you can't read my mind?
I'm saying I wouldn't try.
Good answer.
Yeah. Because it's basic relationship 101, guys. I mean,
yeah, it really is.
That's, everyone talks about how men and women are so different. It's like, but that's just because we don't communicate.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Our first encounter with a bubble of evil is kind of cool. Perrin's worst nightmare comes to life as the axe that he's been brooding about comes to life and tries to kill him. And to make it worse, it puts Fail's life in danger as well. I really like the line after he pushes Fail out of the room and tells the axe how much he hates it. Rand is the one who's supposed to be go mad, and here I am talking to an axe. Rand, burn him.
Everybody blames Rand.
Right? I just can't help thinking that this is just the start of the weird stuff Perrin will be experiencing when being close to Rand, because this particular bubble of evil is kind of tame compared to the two coming up.
True, yeah.
I'm going to come out and say that I feel Phil had no right to slap Perrin for trying to save her.
Mm-hmm.
Perrin was 100% right to force her out of the room to protect her because he could not split his attention between protecting her and controlling the axe. And I want to be clear that I'm not saying this because of some male-female gender role dynamic.
Mm-hmm.
If Perrin, who has massive amounts of strength from years of working in a forge, had a hard time controlling the axe, I highly doubt that Phil would have the strength to make any difference in the situation. Perrin was clearly the stronger one, so he was the one that had to face the axe. What do you think?
I agree that she should not have slapped him because no matter what your gender, violence is not okay. Use your words. But I disagree with everything else you said.
Okay.
Okay, so Perrin does not have the right to take away Phil's choices just because he loves her.
All right.
If you look at the attack, not just as a literal attack, but as a metaphor for the struggles that the pattern's going to throw up against against Perrin and Phil, it represents the entire problem with their relationship. They both keep trying to act on their own, in their own ways, trying to do what they think is best for the other, and it just makes it worse. Like, what they need to do is work together and face these things as a unified front. As much as I hate their relationship for a good portion of the series, Perrin and Phil are actually pretty well suited for each other. They complement each other, each bringing skills and talents to the table that the other lacks, and balancing each other's personality quirks. When they finally figure out their interpersonal crap, like the post-Shadow kidnapping and all that,
Yeah.
they actually become a pretty impressive couple.
Yes, they do.
The problem is that they're both so dysfunctional for so long.
Yeah.
You know, like, Perrin loves Phil, and he wants to protect her, but she isn't a child. His love does not mean he can unilaterally decide things for her. She deserves to have her voice heard and have a say in what risks she's in. You know, like, Perrin needs to stop shutting Phil out, both literally and figuratively. She doesn't need his protection. They need to work together, and then they'll be unstoppable.
So, I understand what you're saying conceptually, and I agree with, like, yes, absolutely, he needs to stop shutting her out. They need to work as a team.
Mm-hmm.
But bringing it back to the specific situation, do you feel that if Phil stayed in the room, and I ask this knowing that we'll never know because that's not what happened, but do you feel that if Phil had stayed in the room, they both would have survived?
I don't know. But what I think is, so Perrin just, like, orders her out. True. And she says, no, I'm not going to leave you. What he should have said was, I can't keep this up. If you stay, you're going to get me killed.
Got it.
And
okay.
It would have still given her the choice. And she would have left. If he phrased it that way, and she knew that her presence was going to put him in more danger, she would have left. Probably a little begrudgingly, but she would have left, or she would have figured a way out of, like, to change the situation. But he didn't give her the choice. He ordered her out.
You know, I hear you say this, and I'm 100% in agreement. And here's why.
Okay.
Because what you had said about being a Chaldean woman. Because if he had said, I'm going to die if you don't leave.
Mm-hmm.
I need you to leave now. In a forceful way, yeah, you're absolutely right. She would have begrudged him, but she would have done it because that's what Chaldean women expect of their men.
Well, no. See, I don't think you're actually understanding the difference.
Okay.
Like, it's not him being forceful. It's him saying, you can stay, but if you stay, you're going to get me killed.
Got it.
Which gives her the choice of, if I leave, I'm protecting you. Does that make sense?
Yes, because now she has agency.
Yeah, that's the big difference.
My problem with that is sitting in Perrin's shoes. So basically, Perrin is offering her the choice of staying and knowing he's going to die, and leaving, and possibly because it's such a new budding relationship. I'm like, so basically, the right thing for Perrin to do in this situation is to sacrifice himself.
No.
Because if he gives her the choice, he has to face the possible consequence that she'll say no and stay, and he's going to die.
No, I don't. I don't see it as sacrificing himself.
Okay.
Because, like I said, I'm pretty sure. Like I'm positive. If he had phrased it that way, she would have left.
Okay.
Or instead of being opposite Perrin, if she had gotten behind Perrin, then the axe still would have only been able to go in one direction.
That's true.
Like, there were ways around it if they worked together.
You know, you're right.
But they're not working together.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Like, I think it was better that she was not in the room. There are ways for them to have worked together with her still in the room, but I do think it's better for her not to be in the room. But what I'm saying is, just because Perrin loves her does not give him authority over her. He doesn't own her because she's his girlfriend.
Right.
So he doesn't have the right to dictate what happens to her. If she wants to risk her life because she loves Perrin and she refuses to leave him alone in peril, that is her choice to make, not his.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
I hear what you're saying, yes.
And we'll see in the future, later on in the series, he keeps trying to protect her and she keeps circumventing him. And her choices are actually what save the day.
Yeah.
You know? So Perrin really needs to stop trying to protect Vale. You know? Like they need to be on the same page.
He needs to stop protecting her with the assumption that she's incapable of taking care of herself. Yes.
Exactly, yeah. Like, she doesn't need his protection. She needs his cooperation.
Right.
And likewise, he needs to cooperate with her for his benefit, you know?
Right, and that's the other thing I agree right now. He doesn't see all of the benefits that she brings to the table.
Yeah, because she is formidable. Like,
yes.
she is. She has all sorts of skills that he lacks when it comes to dealing with other people and strategizing and manipulating a situation for everybody's benefit and, you know, all sorts of stuff like that he has no experience with, but because of who her family is, she does have experience with it. So when I say that they complement each other, like, they really do sort of make up for each other's deficits when they're united. But it just takes them a really long time to get on the same page and become a united front.
And I think we're going to see that by the end of this book.
Definitely the start of it.
Vale especially will have gone a long way down the path to understanding who Perrin is.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. So the crux of the issue with Perrin and Vale is that the Chaldean way of having a relationship and the way men and women relate to each other is very, very different from the Two Rivers way of doing it.
Yes.
From Perrin's perspective, it's a man's job to provide for and protect the woman he loves. Only horrible, brutish men yell at their wives or treat women harshly. He was taught that respecting a woman means treating her with tenderness and reassurance. From Vale's perspective, that's garbage. Chaldean women are strong. They can protect themselves, and men don't present women with love as a gift. Chaldean women earn a man's love and respect by their sheer awesomeness.
Yep.
So when Perrin tries to protect Vale or refuses to show her his temper, she sees it as an insult. To her, it means he thinks that she's weak. And all of their problems boil down to cultural difference and a stupefying inability to communicate. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I mean, it takes forever for them to figure out the cultural differences and that they just need to, like, interpret the other's behavior through the lens of how they were raised.
Yeah.
And understand, like, oh, that's not what they're doing. And then also to realize, okay, so this person was raised this way. These are their views. So if I alter my behavior a little bit, it fits into what they understand, you know?
Yeah.
I think I worded that way more complicated than it needed to be, but hopefully you understand what I'm saying.
I hear what you're saying, yes.
So, yeah. Saldia and the Two Rivers, very, very, very different philosophies.
Well, intercultural relationships are complicated.
They are. Yeah, definitely are.
So next up, we have Matt's section.
Matt plays cards with several Terran lordlings, all sons of the richest and most powerful High Lords of Tyr. His luck is better at dice, but the lords wouldn't be caught dead playing a peasant's game, and his luck was good enough. Matt's goal was to win enough money to leave the stone. He told himself that as soon as he had enough to live the way he wanted, he would go, but in the meantime, there was always more coin to win. The lordlings played cards as much as they drank and chased girls, so there was always a game going. The men talk as they gamble about exotic women. A plain-faced youth named Estienne, son of the richest High Lord in Tyr, drunkenly jokes about Matt going off with those ale wenches. He is too drunk to notice that his jokes have gone over like a lead balloon. The Terrans are all super sensitive about the ale, preferring to ignore their existence altogether. Estienne's comment put a serious damper on the game, and Matt could tell a couple of the lordlings were ready to pack it up. Matt's cards were great, and as a desperate attempt to keep the game going, he tried to get the men laughing at him. He told them a story of Ruark tricking him into asking the Maidens of the Spear to teach him the game Maiden's Kiss. Turns out, Maiden's Kiss was not the simple kissing game he had imagined. Before Matt knew what was happening, he was in a circle of maidens, all with their spear points at his neck like a collar. Each woman took a kiss. If it was a good kiss, they eased up on the spears. If not, the spears pushed in. Matt finishes his story bragging that he got nicked less than he did shaving, and the men erupt with laughter. Matt successfully turns the mood, and the men start gambling again. Estienne drunkenly asks Matt to talk to the Lord Dragon about his intention to change the laws to allow a lord to be called up before the magistrate by a commoner. Matt makes a sarcastic comment about what a shame it would be for the lords to be tried for assaulting some poor fisherman's daughter or having a farmer beaten. The other lordlings shifted uneasily, catching his mood, but Estienne was too drunk to catch his tone, making Matt even more angry with his arrogance and vulgarity. One of the men changed the subject, saying that the Lord Dragon was taking them to war with Ilion. The men jump on the new topic, excited about the prospect of war against their sworn enemies, and start pumping Matt for information. They assure Matt that the High Lords are all loyal to Rand, no matter what those lords out in the countryside may say. Matt thinks that this is all crazy talk, but he's there to gamble. He pulls his last card, the Ruler of Flames, picturing the Emerald seat. He accidentally speaks the old tongue, which the lordlings point out, saying he can't deny it this time. The slip sets Matt on edge, but they continue to place their bets. Outside, in the darkness, a cock crowed. Matt's eyes dropped to his cards, and he saw that the Amerlin's flame had been replaced by a knife. She plunged the tiny blade into the back of his hand. With a hoarse yell, he flung the cards away and hurled himself backwards, overturning his chair, kicking the table with both feet as he fell. The air seemed to thicken like honey. Everything moved as if time had slowed, but at the same time, everything seemed to have happened at once. The cards started growing to life size. The Ruler of Flames stepped out of her card, reaching for Matt with her blade. Reaching into his sleeves, Matt threw his knives at the advancing card people. His thrown daggers moved as if sinking in jelly, but he threw two more at the cards. The world lurched back into normal, and for a moment he thought cards and figures had vanished. Then he saw the cards, back to ordinary size, pinned to one of the dark wood panels by his still quivering knives. The servants and the lordlings are huddled on the floor behind the overturned furniture, gaping at Matt. The lordlings say that they saw nothing out of the ordinary, but they are all clearly shaken, and Matt knows there will be no more gambling with them anytime soon. He retrieves his knives from the wall and rips up the offending cards, just in case. This was obviously the one power. "Burn you, Rand," Matt muttered under his breath. "If you have to go mad, leave me out of it."
The vibe I get off Matt in this chapter is that he's just trying to pass the time until he can figure out what comes next. He does not like the company he keeps because these Terran lords are completely full of themselves and have no regard for human life that is not of noble blood. Mm-hmm. Matt thinks they make an exception for him simply because he's a close personal friend of the Dragon Reborn, and you don't offend friends of a person that powerful. That's mostly true, But I think these men find something fascinating about Matt that keeps them inviting him back to gamble with them. Matt speaks in the old tongue every now and then, and these men understand some of it because they've grown up with tutors that have educated them. He has odd opinions about commoners that are completely foreign to these men. Matt is cool in a way that they are unaccustomed to, but they want to know more. The funny thing is that most of these same men end up joining Matt as leaders in the Band of the Red Hands later on. You can call it the pattern weaving if you will. You can call it Matt being Tavern, but I think it's simpler than that. A bunch of young, rich, privileged men encounter a person that challenges their worldview in a very deep way and presents an opportunity for them to go off adventuring. They are all really terrible here, but these men will become better people for having known Matt and for trying to be more like him.
Yeah, definitely. Because they're just the worst here.
Yeah, they really are. Yeah, absolutely. And I gotta hand it to Ruark. He had Matt figured out from the first time they met on the rooftops of Tyr in the last book.
Yeah.
And hearing Matt retell the story of how Ruark set Matt up to play Maiden's Kiss always makes me laugh.
For sure.
Yeah.
I love that Matt's like, Ruark didn't strike him as a man who played tricks, but he for sure is.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Oh, absolutely.
I really like Ruark. Matt is pretty smooth in this scene when he's manipulating the lords.
Yep.
He can read them pretty well and anticipates their feelings. When Estienne brings up the ale and it almost breaks up the game, he thinks to himself, is the gold worth letting them laugh at him for being a fool? He decides that it is, but even though he tells the story of Ruark tricking him into foolishly asking the maidens to play Maiden's Kiss, he still comes out of the story smelling like roses by implying that he's such a good kisser that the spears didn't get close enough to nick him.
Yep.
He gets the lords laughing at his expense without really losing any cool points at all. And it's not until Estienne starts talking about abusing peasants and assaulting farm girls that Matt loses his cool.
Right. I'm sure we will say this a few more times as we work through the series, but I really do not like Terran lords.
Gee, you think?
The comment that Eston makes about fishermen's daughters made me immediately think of Suan and some of the reflections we see her have about her childhood.
Yeah, definitely.
If a fisherman's life was not already hard enough, the nonchalant way that Eston writes off these peasants as property give us a dark look into the reality of what life most likely could have been. And then Eston goes on and makes even more horrible comments about marrying one of the sisters over the other because their servants are prettier. It just makes me feel really skizzy about the Lords of Tyr. Really skizzy.
Yeah, like all of those comments about women were disgusting.
Yeah,
like,
all of them.
Not okay. These idiots are all so excited about the prospect of going to war with Ilion. We will get a chance to talk more about that soon, but Tyr and Ilion hate each other so much, they're salivating at the chance to war with them. Also of note, the lordlings say that they heard some of the high lords that live out in the countryside have been trying to raise an army to take back the stone. This is relevant to what we'll see of Tom in the next couple of chapters, so I guess just put a pin in that.
Right. The cards coming to life to attack Matt is kind of cool, if not a little on the nose. Matt, the gambler, is attacked by the playing cards.
Right.
But if you look deeper, the cards Matt is attacked by are represented by the Queen of Andor, the High Lord of Tyr, and the Emerald Seat. People keep telling the boys that the Two Rivers is part of Andor, but the Two Rivers recognizes no queen over them. Matt is in Tyr dealing with the High Lords, or at least their sons, and can see firsthand what a pit of vipers the stone really is. And he's been trying to run from the Emerald Seat and Aes Sedai in general for the last 2 books. The specific cards that attack him are symbolically really important.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. I love that Matt keeps pulling knives out and that Jordan even says that Tom told him that you can never have too many.
It's true, yeah.
It's like a reoccurring joke with Matt and Tom, how they just constantly have knives just all over their bodies.
Yeah, well, later
stashed in all sorts of places.
later we'll find that Min, too, has that same knack of just pulling knives out of nowhere.
Well, and Fail, too. It's just pulling knives out of God even knows where. Like, just, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so The lords say that they didn't see anything out of the ordinary. Mm-hmm. They're obviously shaken. But to be fair, if you were sitting to a friendly game of cards and somebody suddenly jumps up, knocks over the table, and starts throwing knives, you'd be shaken too.
Just a little.
So do we think that this is the Terran way of pretending that anything to do with the power doesn't exist? Or do we think that only Matt saw what was happening with the cards? Like, what are your thoughts on this? Because I'm honestly not sure.
I'm inclined to think that this is the Tyrion lords trying to ignore that the power exists and that weird things happen, especially since the Dragon Reborn is now like in town.
Okay. So you think everybody saw what happened, but the Terrans are like, nope, I didn't see anything. Nothing happened here. I don't know what you're talking about. There's no power. What power?
Yeah, well, it kind of, not to mix fandoms, but it kind of calls into mind like a Buffy episode where something happened and they're asking each other the next day, like the people who are new to this ask Buffy the next day, it's like, how come nobody remembers what happens? And the comment is basically like, what? Yeah, like everybody's going to remember the vampires happened? No, people are going to choose the simplest explanation because we're human. That's what we do. The easiest explanation in our mind is the one that we're going to accept.
What was it in Buffy? It was always gangs and PCP.
Yeah, gangs and PCP. Yep.
Like no matter what. Should we go with the usual gangs and PCP? It was gangs and PCP.
Yep.
God, the 90s.
Armin Sherman, man. Yeah.
Okay, so as far as you're concerned, this absolutely happened. Everybody saw it, but the Terrans are just shutting it down.
Yeah, Matt just kicked the table over and like threw some knives.
Yeah.
Yep.
You know, I think you're probably right because of in the next bit with Rand, he thinks he's going crazy when he sees his reflections, but then he goes, no, Berlaine saw it too.
Right.
Like she sees it, so I'm not going mad yet. So, and you know, obviously Fail saw the
axe, yeah.
But I mean, the axe is three-dimensional. It buried itself in the door. Obviously, the axe was going to be seen. But, like, the reflections were more along the lines of what Matt saw with the cards. But since Berlaine was able to see Matt's reflections, it would be consistent if the Terran Lords would have been able to see Matt's cards do what they did.
And there's another slight complication to if the Terran Lords acknowledge that maybe this was something of the power. I mean, they're supposed to be loyal to Rand, right? The only people in Tyr right now capable of wielding the power are Moiraine, that we know of, and Rand. So are they going to say that, yes, we absolutely saw the person who's in charge, the king who's in charge, he tried to kill all of us? Nope, I saw nothing. Nope. Saw nothing.
Yeah.
You know, I think there might be a slight bit of that too as part of the justification. Because if they admit that they saw it, then Rand could possibly be responsible for it. And politically, no, Rand wouldn't try to kill us. Nothing happened.
Right. Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Took Easter.
Right. All right, let's wrap this up and head on over to Rand.
Rand dreams that Moiraine is prodding him with a stick toward where the Amyrlin waits with a rope halter for him. Dark friends and Forsaken lurk in the shadows. He dodges the stick and runs away, but Moiraine calls after him that it's too late for that. He flashes to the waterwood back home, and Min and Elaine are there. They invite him to go skinny dipping and take off their clothes. He spins around mortified and comes face to face with Egwene, who looks at him sadly and then turns and disappears into the wood. He starts to go after her, but Min and Elaine call for him to join them in the water, asking if he does not deserve what he wants for a change. Rand reaches up to wipe sweat from his face and sees his hand is rotted to the bone. He wakes up with a jerk and feels guilty for dreaming about Min and Elaine like that. He hears rustling in the dark and realizes that he is not alone. Calendar lay out of reach, so he summons the flaming sword with the power. He channels every light in the room on, and instead of thieves or assassins, he finds Berlaine, the beautiful young ruler of Mayene, who had practically been a captive in Tyr until he came. He let the sword disappear and asked her how she got past the Ale guards. She tells him that they let her through when she told them he summoned her. She is scantily clad, and though she claims that she wants to talk, Her real meaning could not be plainer, even to someone as bull-headed as Rand. Rand politely tells her that she should go, but Berlaine is a determined woman. Rand loses his cool and pushes her away with a wall of air and traps her against the wall. He tied off the flow, fencing her in. He tells her that she should go back to Mayene and that Tyr will not trouble her country again. Changing tactics, Berlaine apologizes for handling things badly, claiming that customs in her country were less formal. Besides, she couldn't help admiring someone as handsome and strong as Rand. She asks him not to send her away, and though there was every expression of openness, Rand could still see her maneuvering. He was impressed with her determination. Outside in the darkness, a cock crowed. To Rand's surprise, Berlaine suddenly stared past him, eyes as big as teacups. He spins, flaming sword in hand, and sees his reflection stepping out of one of the stand mirrors across the room. Suddenly, his reflection was crawling out of all the mirrors in the room and attacking with their own flaming swords. Rand smashes all the mirrors with the power, sending shattered glass everywhere. Facing off against 3 reflections hell-bent on killing him, Rand moved through all the forms Lan taught him, slicing his feet on the broken glass and taking wounds from the reflections' swords. The old, never-healing wound in his side tore open. Rand can feel his strength ebbing, and he rolls across the bread to catch his breath. A tiny replica of himself, this time from a polished silver on the nightstand, stabs him in the hand. He grabs the tiny reflection and feels his hand start to grow numb. He sends heat from Sidin toward the figure, and it pops like a bubble, sending a small portion of his lost strength back into him. The 3 big reflections are momentarily weakened, and he realizes the reflections are linked. Taking a foolish gamble, he let the flaming sword vanish, and the reflections lost their swords too. The 3 reflections leapt on him, all 4 crashing to the floor in a tangle of grappling limbs, rolling across the glass-littered carpet. They wrestle for a while, sapping Rand of his life force as he struggles to remember what he did before. He fills himself with Sidin, and one of the reflections absorbs into him, slowly followed by the other 2. Thinking that one of the Forsaken just tried to kill him, Rand limps over to Kalendor. Then he remembers that Berlaine is still in the room and still trapped behind a wall of air. White-faced, she tries to ask which one he is, but can't quite get the words out. "I am the only one there is," he said gently. She apologizes profusely for offending him, scared out of her wits, and promises to never bother him again. He unties the flow holding her and tells her she can go as she wishes. She picks her way through the broken glass, but stops at the door saying that she can send the ale or an Aes Sedai to tend to him. He tells her no, he'd rather she not mention it to anybody. She leaves, and Rand limps over to the foot of the bed, sitting with Kalendor across his knees. He knew he needed healing, and he knew that soon he would have to open the door and be the dragon reborn again. But for now, he only wanted to sit and remember a shepherd named Rand al'Thor.
We all know that everyone dreams. And when we dream, we enter into a state where our mind is allowed to process things that otherwise would censor if we were awake. Mm-hmm. So Rand dreaming about skinny dipping with girls he's attracted to is not too far-fetched.
Right.
But why is this here? I mean, we get to see how conflicted Rand is about his feelings and further reinforce that he was brought up to have a conservative view of relationships, which is why he feels so guilty about it.
Right.
But it just feels obvious and kind of tropey to me.
Yeah.
It's mildly funny, but I don't know. The whole scene can start to verge into a realm of virgin shaming after a while, and that's not good. If you're not careful, it can start to merge into a realm of other toxic things, and I find myself asking if this needs to be here, because I don't think it does.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the dream is just to let us know that Rand is falling for both Min and Elaine, and his feelings for Egwene have waned, which we'll get into a few chapters from now.
Yeah.
And as far as, like, Berlaine and all that, I mean, I think it's an interesting dynamic, and I think it tells us more about Berlaine's character than it does about Rand's.
Yes.
I don't know. I mean, I don't really have a problem with it, but I see what you're saying, that it's touches on some iffy.
I want to be clear. I'm not trying to say I think this is a bad scene and I think Robert Jordan's a bad person for putting this here.
Right.
I'm just finding more and more in my life that I'm starting to question the things that I've always taken for granted as being funny and okay.
Right.
And this is one of those things where I'm like...
Yeah. Well, and I think this is definitely a sign of the times when the book was written.
True.
This fits in perfectly with the time it was written,
Yeah.
where it probably doesn't fly quite as much now.
Maybe.
You know?
Yeah.
So I think it's because you're approaching it from a 2020 viewpoint. And, you know, Jordan wrote it in
the
90s
Yeah.
viewpoint. Yeah.
Sure.
I think that's really what it is. It's just society's... like culturally we've shifted a little with our perspective on what we find funny and what we don't find funny and all that kind of stuff. So I think you're just butting up against that, but I don't think there's necessarily anything wrong with the scene.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
What you're saying makes sense. And I agree with you. I just wanted to say that maybe for today's stories, as we write things like this, writers should be asking themselves, does this kind of stuff still need to be there? So.
Yeah, I agree. I think as people are writing things these days, they need to think about what messages is sending underneath. You know,
Right.
what subtext does this have? You know, like when people read this, what cues are they going to be picking up that I may not have intended?
True.
You know?
Yeah. So, yeah, that's all I'm really trying to say. Yeah.
A lot changes over time. You know, your viewpoints change. So I'm sure, you know, in a time where things were less sensitive and we were all less culturally aware, this scene wouldn't have registered as virgin shaming. Like that, virgin shaming wasn't even a thing.
Nope,
a concept that we thought about.
Nope.
You know, but you know, things change. It's been a while.
So, speaking of which, like, 19 years can do a lot to your perspective.
Yeah, sure can.
When I first read this section where Berlane comes into Rand at night, I had recently graduated with my biblical studies degree from a Christian university. And I remember being so upset with Berlane, being just very judgmental about how she could use her body like this to seduce Rand. Mm-hmm. And I've been through a lot of things since, and I see the world very differently now. Mm-hmm. So reading this passage this time made me realize just how dedicated Berlane is to ensuring the survival of her nation.
Yeah.
She will use every tool in her arsenal as long as it will mean that Tyr will not swallow up her country or destroy it with their superior military forces. And to her credit, Rand promises her that this will be the case, so mission accomplished.
Yeah, I have no problem with what Berlane tries to do here. You know, like, she comes on a little strong and probably could have been more quick to take no for an answer.
Yes.
But otherwise, I can't fault her. You know, like, the other women in this book tend to slut-shame Berlane.
Yes.
And I am not for it. She is a very beautiful woman who is very aware of how others look at her and treat her. What's wrong with using that to her advantage? Mm-hmm. You know? Berlane is not an idiot. She understands the crappy position her country's in, and she takes her responsibility to her people seriously.
She really does.
Obviously, the people of Mayene are pretty chill about sex, so it's no big deal. You know, like, I see no issue with her using her desirability as a bargaining chip when it pleases her.
Right.
And Rand is young and attractive, you know? Like, I'm sure she would enjoy negotiating with him as much as he would.
And I think that's the key. She is not being forced into using her body as a chip by some other man in power over her.
It's her choice.
Her choice. This is what she sees as the way that she wants to do this.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think that's the big change that I see from my own perspective. Like, once I realize that's a huge big deal. She's not doing anything wrong.
Yeah, absolutely. She has 100% agency, 100% like power over her body. And that's really important. And also one of the reasons I think the other women resent her.
Yeah.
You know, like, I think a lot of their slut-shaming and a lot of their instant dislike of her partially is jealousy because she is so beautiful. But also I think it's jealousy that she's so free, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Like, she has taken the power and control over her body and uses it at her discretion. And I think that's very threatening to the other women around her.
Yeah. We could write a whole book on that.
Yeah, that is a whole nother topic that, to be honest, I don't have the energy to go into right now.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that's a lot of where the slut shaming comes from. Dissertation avoided.
For our final bubble of evil, Rand's reflections come out of the mirror and try to kill him.
Mm-hmm.
So the axe, the cards, and Rand's reflections have all come to life to kill their specific Tavaren. I'm sure there's a paging Dr. Freud joke in here somewhere.
Yeah.
At first, it can be easy to assume that Rand fighting his reflection is an allegory for him fighting himself. But it may be more correct to say that Rand is fighting what he sees himself to be. When we look in a mirror, we hardly see ourselves for what we really are. Rand has a lot of emotional baggage that he's carrying with him that distorts the way he thinks about himself. Add to that the voice he has inside his head, and the Rand that comes out of the mirror may not be anything like the actual Rand in the room. There's a lot going on here, and it just feels like a massive symbol of the state of Rand's mental health. It's no wonder that we end this chapter with Rand sitting on his bed with Kalendor in his lap, just thinking about what it is like to not be the Dragon Reborn.
Well, that's the thing. Rand is struggling to figure out what it means to be the Dragon Reborn.
True.
He's fighting the different versions of himself. He's losing the version of himself that is a shepherd from the Two Rivers. He's not that boy anymore. The world has started to see him as the Dragon Reborn. And he even makes the distinction when he's talking to Berlain that there's a difference between the Dragon Reborn and Rand al'Thor.
Yep.
You know, he doesn't fit the identity of the Dragon Reborn yet. And he's not even sure what that means. Some people say the dragon is going to save the world, and some people say the dragon is going to destroy the world. Which dragon is the real dragon? You know, he's got Moraine and Suan trying to manipulate him and shape him into what they want. Everybody wants him to be somebody different, and he has no idea who he is anymore. So for me, that's what the reflections mean.
Now, there's so many different versions of him.
Yeah. And he doesn't know what's true anymore. Like, he's losing himself, you know?
That's a great interpretation. I like that.
Thank you. Basically, it's just been a hell of a night for our boys.
Yeah, that sums it up. Yep. And that's it for Chapter 2 of The Shadow Rising. Join us next week for Chapters 3 and 4, where our group deals with the aftermath of what happened in this chapter.
We hope that you enjoyed this episode of the Wheel of Time Pod-Thru.
We'll see you again next week. Make sure you rate and subscribe to us on your favorite podcatcher. We're available all over. If you leave us a positive review, it would really help us out. It makes us more visible so more people can find us. You can tweet us at WhatPodThru or email us at whatpodthru@gmail.com and tell us your thoughts on anything we covered today.
That's WOTPODTHRU@gmail.com. Or find our Wheel of Time Pod-Thru channel on YouTube. Like, subscribe, ring the bell, do the things. Thanks, everybody, and we hope the wheel weaves you in our direction again soon.